أبدا آمين. Parables. They're nice and short, aren't they? How many parables have we covered so far? 7. I just cheated from the back. I know that was 7. First one was the weeds among weeds, the leavened bread, the hidden treasure, the net, the king and the accounts, the wedding feast and the 10 virgins, and today. Do you have a favorite parable that always come in mind when you kind of reading the Bible or always look forward to? Do you have one that you always like to read because it brings different meanings? No? They're all the same? Some people like to, for example, stay away from the 10 version, but it depresses them because they feel sorry for the foolish version. Some people like to look for the lost son because they feel like there's hope. So each one has got a particular message, and it brings back some good meanings. But the question is, what I'll do is I'll cover a little bit about parables, like introduction a bit about parables. Then I'll give out some sheets which covers some facts that we share between us. Watch a little video which is 4 minutes, and then I'll put my contemplation on this week's parable. So parable, parable, they are simple stories, easy to remember. Sometimes they're imaginary words, they're not really real, most time they're imaginaries. They convey a certain message. Sometimes they are very deep at conveying, and it's central to the teaching of Christ himself. So we find parable about man knocking on his neighbor at the door at night. Another one about a roadside mugging, which is the Good Samaritan. Sometimes it talks about the kingdom of the growth of the kingdom of heaven, the importance of prayer, the meaning of love. They're all very nice and short stories that conveys messages. But why? Why did Christ want to, talk to us in this kind of short language? Christ answered this to the disciple when they asked him in Matthew chapter 13. And he said, Jesus told them many things in parable. In fact, much of what Jesus told them came from the parable and often described the stories as spiritual principles. So when the disciple of Jesus asked him why he spoke in parable, he answered, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. But to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and the one and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parable, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, and do not understand." That's in Matthew chapter 13. So I did a little bit of Googling, because sometimes the first thing to start to crack the talk is about from Google and see what he says. And so look, there's some sayings that the parables, Christ spoke to parable for 4 reasons. First, Jesus used parable in order to make his message clear to all. The meaning was revealed only to those who are able to understand. So the audience gathered to hear Christ speak about sheep, birds, farmers, other familiar images, and often without understanding the larger picture of the story he spoke. His disciple would frequently later told him, "Tell us the meaning of this message. You've told us some interesting story, but what is the meaning?" And sometimes Christ would go and explain to them what is the meaning of this parable. Secondly, Jesus used parable to communicate to both common people and the religious leaders. So rather than using words of the learned scholars, Jesus spoke in everyday language to connect with his audience. He could have used some hard words, but he tried to use common ones so he can connect and communicate and understand. His audience would understand him. Thirdly, Jesus used parable in part because he spoke with authority. He does not have to reference anyone. He can be the reference. He's got the authority to be able to be the reference of things. He speaks with authority. And lastly, parable were a common cultural form of communication. Though the religious leader regularly resorted to the quoting of one another with academic language, but Jesus spoke firmly, which is similar to the point before. So as I was preparing this parable, and I looked at it and said, look, okay, well, if Jesus spoke in many parables, do you know how many parables we have in the Gospel or in the Bible? Can you guess the number? How many parables we have? Unique one, not repeated, of course. Guess the number. More. 37. Well, what I did is I found this on the internet, which was it helped me a lot in terms of knowing what's the classifications of parables, and I found an interesting fact. I'll share it with you. So I'll just have So out of this 37 parables we have, they're all scattered among the 4 Gospels, except St. John. St. John hasn't actually mentioned any parables at all, surprisingly, and I don't know why. Then I went and said, look, why would St. John not mention any of those parables? Well, we know that Matthew wrote this Gospel to the Jews, and we know that the Jews' class is a bit more layman kind of things, and he wrote them so many parables, as we saw. St. Mark wrote to the Roman. The Roman is a bit educated, so he wrote them fewer. St. Luke was written to the Greek and the Roman, but again, surprisingly, he wrote a lot of parables there. But St. John, nothing. Even though St. John wrote it to also the Greeks and the Romans. It was an interesting fact, but it's good to see which parables have been repeated, which one has been uniquely mentioned in some books, and so on. So the parable of today, which is about the labor and the vineyard. Before I go on, you can see out of all of this, you can see there's categories of those parables. If you put them all in categories, you will see that some talks about the kingdom of heaven, and hearing and seeing, that's about the sower and the grower, and usually starts with the word of the kingdom of heaven is like, and he continue on about what is the kingdom of heaven is like, and he start the parable. Then some parable talks about loss and redemptions, like the lost sheep, the lost coin, the prodigal son, so things that are lost and then found. Some parable talks about love and forgiveness, like the Good Samaritan, the 2 debtors, and the unforgiven servants. They're about love and how love can help forgive. Some talks about prayer and talks about the importance of prayer, which is the Pharisees and the Republicans and the friends who knocks at night, and some that are really in theology as such, like the 10 virgins, that talks about the second comings and about a lot of things that might happen at the end of about the rich man and Lazarus, the lamp under the bush, and there's few parables that talks a bit about theology, hidden of course in the meanings. So let's not take them lightly. The parables are an awesome way of passing messages, and Christ is conveying or using this himself to pass on. So what I'm going to do is I've found this nice and interesting, simple, some people might think it's pretty much directed to kids, but I find it very straightforward to the point of what the parable I'm pretty much trying to pass to us. So I've got a little video there, and then after that I'll have a very short contemplation on that parable. I've got 4 points to mention, and we'll end it. And I hope the technology will not fail me, but I'm glad to see. Oh, it's working? Fantastic.
Taylor Nation.
Well, at least I'm not addicted to a silly computer game.
Well, if you call 3 or 4 hours a night addicted, then I'm guilty. But at least I am ranked in the top 100,000 in the world.
Ooh, how exciting.
Hello.
Phil, it's Sir Barry. How do you fancy earning £200?
That sounds good to me, sir.
Excellent. Well, Rena has been sick, and I need you to come over to my mansion ASAP and do her jobs for me, okay?
Sure, Sir Barry. Be round in a tip. Sorry, Brian. Mustache. Sir Barry needs me.
Right, Phil. Rena has given me a list of jobs that need doing. First of all, there is some washing up from last night's party. Then you can muck out Charles, my shepherd pony, polish my trophies, get my shopping, take my suits to the dry cleaners, and give Frederick his medicine. Oh, and don't forget to feed Herbert and Camilla.
Sorry, Herbert and who?
Herbert and Camilla, my guinea pigs. They're very cute.
Right. That's a lot of jobs.
I'm sure you can manage, Phil. I will be in the pool if you need me. Ah, this is a life.
Charles, no. Charles, stop that. Ow, Charles, I'm not an apple.
I had better phone Vincent. Vincent, it's Sir Barry. What are you up to?
Well, Sir Barry, I have just been to another fantastic car boot sale. I purchased a rather fabulous inflatable dartboard.
Right. Well, how do you fancy coming over to the mansion and helping Phil out with a few odd jobs? He can't really cope with the workload.
Seriously, how does such a small animal produce so much? Of course, sir. I'll be round as fast as I can. So, Phil, I hear you need a bit of help. What can I do?
Well, I finished the mountain of dishes and cleaned up after Charles.
Is there a cork at his...
Look, every time I turned around, I found a new deposit. It was endless.
Okay, so what's next?
We have to polish his trophies.
Well, that doesn't sound too taxing. You must be joking.
Brian, it's Sir Barry. Are you free?
I am now, Sir Barry. I've just been kicked out of the biscuit factory again.
Seriously, Brian, that is the second time in a month. Why don't you come over to my mansion and help Phil and Vincent with a few jobs?
Okay, Sir Barry. It is him. Right, chaps. What's left to do?
Well, Vincent is off to buy some suits. You can take Sir Barry shopping to the dry cleaners, and I'm going to sort out Frederick, Herbert, and Camilla. We only have 1 hour, so be quick.
You're finished, lads?
Yes, Harry.
Well, apart from the fact that you drugged my guinea pigs, fed my bodyguard pet food, scarred my pony for life, and washed my shopping, it wasn't a bad effort. So, here you are, Brian, £200. Vincent, £200. And Phil, here's your £200.
But Sir Barry, not to sound ungrateful, but I have been here all day and those two have only worked a few hours. I think I should get a bit more.
Did you not agree to work for £200, Phil?
Well, yes, but they haven't had to deal with a pony that has serious waste issues, and 2 of the most vicious guinea pigs I've ever met.
Look, Phil, I can do what I like with my money, and I want to pay you all £200. Don't be envious, because I'm being generous.
Sorry, Sir Marion.
Inflatable darts, anyone?
Yay!
Well, it sounds a bit more for the kiddies, but it's got a nice and interesting meaning, and I kind of enjoyed it and I laughed a bit. Now I have 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 topics, maybe 6 points that I've actually learned from reading those. I don't need to read it. I'm sure you all remember. You got the points. You got the message of what we are trying to get. But, or maybe I shall have that for reference. Okay, if there is one, and only one lesson learned from this parable, what would it be? Just one. Okay? Just one. Tony? Accept the invite. We're talking about the wedding, right? You're still in the wedding mode? Because you're doing the wedding the other day. So what else besides accepting the invite? The question is, if there is one thing we learn from this parable, what would it be? One thing you learn or benefit, or something that you take personally?
Just be satisfied.
Be satisfied with what you've got? Yes. Okay, perfect. That's one of my points which I'll mention later on. But you have one that is pretty much what I think Christ is trying to pass. How about this? Is one message that Christ is trying to teach.
That the valuation is different than our valuation.
Yep. In terms of the reward, or in terms of what he asked us to, or
Maybe both.
maybe both. Cool. Nina? Yes? By all means. This is also one of my points which I'll mention later on. That's excellent, but that's not what Christ is trying to tell us to. Christ tells us one point. And I think he started this from the end of chapter 19 and he ended it at the end of this parable. So he probably pretty much sandwiched it in the middle.
You don't have to judge the others.
Judge the others, or maybe look at what the others have. Okay, that's good. George, you always come up with brilliant ideas. Not today? Okay. All right. If we look at the last verse in chapter 19, which is exactly the last verse of that chapter. Let me get it down. All right. What does it say? Or maybe the second last. Or the last. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. Say it in Arabic. ولكن كثيرون أولون ويكونون آخرين وآخرون أولون. Now, if I go back to 20, this is pretty much the main message that Christ is telling us, or was telling pretty much whoever the audience of those. So let's read this. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Now he had agreed with laborers for a denarii a day, and he sent them to his vineyard. Very generous. He was upfront with the reward. He was told them that I need you for this, and he's giving him a chance to do the task from the beginning of the day to the end, like with that poor man that he told him all what he wanted to do, including the hard one, the easy one, and he told him, I'll give you that. And I'll tell you what, I applaud those people that went up early to look for work, They're dedicated. They're not the lazy ones. They went early. They wanted to work from the beginning of the day, and you want to earn money. And Christ applauded that because he went early for them too. So that's one thing, that the early part of it. We accept Christianity early in our lives, and we should be proud that we early we're absorbed with Christ early in our lives. So he went out on the third hour, and others standing at the marketplace, and to them, you also come in the vineyard, and whatever is right, I will give you. We missed out something here. He said, what is right? The previous one told them, give you this as a way, but this is, I will give you what is right. This is people that you do, I will get that. How many of the parents introduce the concept of money foods? You know how also look, if you stand dishwashing, you get a dollar. If you look cut the grass, it's a way of encouraging to be part of the family, right? Some people absolutely yes, which is one of them. Because not doing this as a tool, not giving them you do this or this for that. You do this because he what is right. It is the of love. God will give us rewards because he loves us. He will out of his love. If I give them $50 for it, if you have $20 out of love, not out of a contract, you go this, give your wages for it. So they went early, they were given wages of their work. Again, he went out on the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and he did wise. So he went on collecting people all the way. The structure of the day then at the Jews that starts from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And usually they broke it into 3 groups, and have it in the first hour, the 3rd, the 9th, and the 11th. So the 5 they used to go, so they divided the day. It ends at the 12th hour, and that's when the day ends. Christ went in the first hour. Those people that were hired, they much worked all day up until the 12th hour, and kept like that poor man everything pretty much. And then until the 11th hour. The 11th hour is pretty much more left to be done. Let's see what he did with those people. And about that hour, he went out, found others standing, and to them. Let's look at these words, which is again we passed through, find a very sweet meaning to it. Why have you been standing here all day? Are they really standing there all day? Because if they did, Christ would have hired them or the 6th or even the 1st. He knew that they're standing there all day. He knew, but he didn't want to embarrass. Just when he went to the Samaritan, he said, call your husband. Like, I don't husband. So he was pretty compassionate toward them, even though they were, I don't want to use lazy, they had jobs, they had busy, where they were so many, but he told them, why is there all that? He gave him the excuse. He had come and said, because we had not to hire us. Come on, if you were here 3 hours ago, you would have been hired. But he says, I'll give you the right. He had a couple of years to it. And he said, same message that he was trying to tell us through this parable here. And by the way, I've actually covered up all my points through as we go into. So my first point was the early rise, the early morning, that he came early and he asked them, starting early in the morning so he can get as many people as he can. Second of all is the contract that he's done with people. It's like, you come and do this and I'll give you that. But thirdly, the fact that he's given people with whatever is right, which is a gift given from God with love. Fourthly, how soft the Lord was he when he's talking to those people of the 11th hour. He said, why are you standing all day? Why haven't you worked? And we remember the conversation we've had with them. Then he called the laborer and gave them in a reverse order, which caused this furiousness that happened. And lastly, your evil eyes, the fact that Christ did not like that rage that happened from those people, and he told them, your evil eyes, and that comparison with the older son. So he's pretty much directing this parable to who? The Jews. Telling them, you think you're saved? You think that you're the chosen people? Guess what? There are a people called the Gentile who would come and work for 1 hour, and you would exactly get what you get. Just like Christ wanted to emphasize that this concept of the chosen people is no longer exist. You might be chosen still, but because of a contract, I can, with love, provide salvation to others. Remember when Pope Shenouda were asked, and I don't know whether we're asking, I said, only Orthodox will be in heaven. What did he say? I don't know. It's Christ, it's up to him. It's exactly like that. It's up to him to give the gift of being in heaven or not. Just remember, so the last would be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few chosen. Glory be to God forever.